I was 10 years old, living in Springfield, Massachusetts. And at the time, I was a student at Freeman Elementary School. And I'll never forget the day a school social worker came to talk to us about what happens when people are mistreated. She talked about abuse. She talked about neglect and the kind of pain that children really never find the words to explain. And I'll never forget her name. It was Mrs. Knowles. Her voice filled the gym. And it was a very heavy air that was in the room that day. And I remember the weight of her words pressing against my chest until the tears just came down. I didn't plan on crying that day, but everything I've been carrying from home just really finally spilled out. Maybe that's why the social worker was actually there in the first place, because my mother was hurting and she was also hurting me. The abuse was physical, it was mental, and I thought I couldn't name it then, but really I knew our home was very unsafe. And looking back, I realized I was probably the reason why the social worker actually came to the school that day. I know there were signs. And after the talk, she asked for a couple of us to stay behind. And there were maybe about 5 girls or so. And she led us into this small room, and it was like this very dimly lit room off on the side of the gym. And it was where the musical instruments were stored. And the air in there was, again, very heavy, and the lights were low. And it was like the world was holding its breath, as I think of it now. And that's when one of the girls, and I'll just call her Wanda, turned to me and said these words that I'll never forget. And she said to me, "I'm being abused at home." And my heart dropped. She was trembling. Her eyes were full of shame. And I remember saying the only words that rose in my heart at the time. And I just told her, "You're not alone." Maybe she came to me because she saw that I was brave first, because I had already opened up about what was happening in my home and in my life. She saw that I was able to show emotion, which was not really shown where I came from. And by speaking my truth, I really gave her permission to speak hers. And in that moment, I learned something that's really sacred in my soul, and it's always carried with me throughout my life. When you share your truth, you free someone else to be able to do the same. And that day in that dark music room became the first chapter of my true calling. I still remember it clearly to this day, lying in that hospital bed when the doctor came in and said, "You have sepsis." And everything around me just moved slow. You know, the nurses were running around, the doctors, alarms were going off, and my husband was standing there crying and praying over me, saying, "God, please save my baby." And at that moment, I didn't even know what sepsis really was, but I could tell by the look on the doctor's face that it was serious. And I also knew that I was transitioning. He told me that if the infection reached my heart, they may have to also do surgery on my heart too. And as he spoke, I felt myself sinking. I was so scared. like my life was hanging in the wind. It was a matter of life and death. But let me take you back for a second, because you need to hear this story to understand. Because this didn't just start in the hospital. It actually started when I came home from deployment. And I'll never forget. It was at the height of COVID, the pandemic. I had just come home from deployment and I was exhausted. It was very traumatic. But I kept pushing like I always did, such a strong woman. Then I remember this one night where I had unbearable pain in my left hip. And it was so bad that I couldn't even walk. Now, you need to know this about me. I've always been so strong. And I used to call myself a beast, the one who used to do bodybuilding. I did races all over the world, marathons. And I always pushed through the pain, and I knew what pain was. So instead of waking up my husband, my airborne ranger husband, what did I do? I crawled to the bathroom myself. And that's how strong I thought I had to be always. And eventually, the pain got so bad that we went to the hospital. And they ran tests, of course, and they ran more tests. And the doctors came in and out of the room, and no one had answers. And 4 days went by, and finally, one of the doctors actually walked in the room and said, "Captain Harrell, we can't find anything today. We're going to send you home. And by the way, since you just came home from deployment, we're going to send in a psychiatrist to evaluate you." A psychiatrist? After everything I've been through, I'm a mental health provider, serving my country. After working all these years, treating so many patients all over the world, I knew something was wrong and I knew I was transitioning, but they actually didn't believe me. And in that moment, something inside of me just broke open. Because how many of us have been there? You know your body, you know your spirit, but no one listened. Especially as women, and even more so as women of color. We're often dismissed, we're labeled, and we're ignored when we do decide to finally ask for help. And we're crying for help. And by the time they figured out what was really going on, that it was sepsis, it was actually almost too late. And in that moment, I couldn't be a patient. I had to be this professional person. And again, I wasn't the officer, I wasn't the therapist, but I was just a woman fighting for her life. But here's what I've learned from that experience. I really learned that when everything is falling apart around us, that's when your purpose is being reborn. That is when you actually become. And I made a decision in that hospital bed that if I live through this pain, if I live through this disease, I was going to live my life so different. I wasn't going to live for the achievements or accolades or titles. I was going to live in alignment with who God truly called me to be. And today, people actually see the strength, the glow, the anointing, the success. But what they didn't see was the crawl through the darkness. They didn't see the tears. They didn't see all the pain. They didn't see the fear that I actually had. And they don't see the woman who almost did not make it. And that's why I actually share my story now, because I don't look like what I've been through by the grace of God. But everything that I've been through made me who I actually am today. So if you're watching this and you're in that place, I just want you to know that wherever you are in this world and you feel unseen, you feel unheard, you feel like nobody believes you, just know this: you are not alone. I'll never forget that day, September 11th, 2001. I was actually in my master's program at the University of Maryland School of Social Work, and I was at my internship that day at the Public Defender's Office. And I just thought it was a normal morning, until somebody walked in and said, "Turn on the TV, turn on the TV." And we all watched in horror as the second plane hit the Twin Towers. And in that moment, the whole room froze. Something shifted in me, because it was like God whispered to me that you're being called to serve. And that day, I declared that I was going to be active duty in the military, because everything had changed. Everything changed in that room, and actually, the seeds of serving had actually been planted in me many, many years earlier, because I was in junior ROTC. So I had wore the uniform and I had understood what it really meant to serve. And I did. I actually joined the Air Force as a first lieutenant and a clinical social worker. And I remember just being so bright-eyed. I was driven, I was focused, and I knew that I just wanted to make a difference in this world, and I was so successful in the military. I climbed the high ranks, and eventually I transferred into the United States Public Health Service, where I got to wear Navy uniforms at this time. And I'll never forget the day that I actually found out that I made captain. And that's equivalent to a colonel in the Air Force. And I went online and I saw my name on that list, and I just stared in disbelief. I had worked so hard to make captain. I did everything. And I thought to myself, I made it. I finally made it. And all the sacrifices, the deployments, the sleepless nights, the trauma, everything that I had went through led to this moment right here. And my first thought was, I have to call my Nana, and that was my maternal grandmother, who had actually raised me, the one who was always believed in me. But she was actually gone. She had transitioned. She was no longer here. And suddenly in this moment, that should have been like the most exciting time for me in celebrating. But you know what? I actually felt empty inside. I had the titles, I had the home, I was married, I had achieved everything on my list that the world told me that I should achieve. But inside, I felt alone. And that's when I realized that something I have been running from my entire life. No matter how much you achieve, if you don't have peace within, it will never feel like enough. If I could sit down and talk to my 21-year-old self, let's see, when I was 21, I was a student at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. They call it ZooMass. I was working hard. I had a lot of jobs. I was having fun, partying, and just living life like any normal college student. And I was just really trying to figure things out, like most people at that age. But what a lot of people didn't see was that I was in a very toxic relationship. And every year that boyfriend cheated on me with somebody new. Oh my goodness. And every time that happened, I told myself I was fine. Like, oh, I got this. And I smiled and I stayed busy and I just kept going, right? I wore this mask. And back then, I thought strength meant pretending that things didn't hurt. And I actually thought that being confident meant hiding my pain. And without realizing it, I learned how to wear a mask. And I wore that mask well. You hear me? That mask followed me into adulthood, into my career, my marriage, my leadership positions. You know, I got to work with the White House, all these things. And it looked like success was great on the outside. I was very successful, but it was the exhaustion on the inside that, number one, I didn't realize I had, and I just hid from everybody. And let's just fast forward to many, many, many years later. I had it made, right? Married, dream home, cars, just living our dream life. You know, and I told y'all about the accolades. I served under the Surgeon General of the United States. I was the Director of Addictions Medicine for the entire Department of Defense. You hear me? Working with the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. I was living what most people would call the dream. But actually, honestly, I was lost, completely lost. At 21, I didn't really know what life was really about. And 20 years later, I had achieved everything the world told me was going to make me happy. But I still felt empty inside. I still felt that. And that's when I learned my first great lesson. Okay, let's get into this. Number one, the day you remove the mask is the day you will be set free. Okay, I'm gonna say that again. The day you remove the mask is the day you'll be set free. And when I had my near-death experience, that changed everything for my life. Because when I was laying in that hospital bed with sepsis, fighting for my life, okay, all the titles, all the control, all the accomplishments, right? None of that mattered. No one cared. When I was on my deathbed, I didn't think about all the things I accomplished on my list. And in that moment, I was stripped of everything that wasn't real. The mask actually came off, and I was just left with me, raw, vulnerable, human, but for the first time, I was free. I'm on a mission to help people get in alignment with their divine assignment so that they can live the life of their dreams. The number one reason why most people never get to live their dream life isn't because they lack talent. It's because they lack opportunity. It's because they're too busy trying to live someone else's dream. How many people can relate to that? They're trying to be what their parents told them to be, what society told them that success should look like. We're looking at Instagram and TikTok, trying to keep up with what social media says instead of listening to the quiet voice inside that's saying you were meant for more. And honestly, I think that's what is a huge problem, because people feel disconnected from who they truly are, and they're out of alignment with their purpose, their values, and their divine assignment. And guess what? That's where I come in, because I'm on a mission to help people, especially high-achieving women, realign with who they truly are so that they can finally live who they were divinely created to be. And these are the women that have achieved incredible things. They have the titles, they have the leadership, they have the families, but deep down inside, they still feel unfulfilled. And they've mastered success on the outside, but they're yearning for peace on the inside. And through my company and my programs, I help leaders, entrepreneurs, and executives align with their divine assignment so that they can experience clarity, legacy, financial freedom, and soul fulfillment. And so the story behind our mission of Blissful Life Consulting, years ago, I was working as a coach. I believed in personal development, and I invested heavily, sometimes using my credit cards, going into debt, and I was committed to my growth, but I reached a point where the cost was really overwhelming, and I remember thinking I wanted to keep going, but I can't keep doing this at the expense of my peace. And that actually shifted me because I made a promise to myself that when I reached the other side of things, I would never build something that excluded people who were truly ready to transform. So now I've built multiple ways for people to work with me, accessible coaching programs, retreats, corporate partnerships, keynotes, online courses, and community experiences, because everyone deserves a chance to live in alignment. Real people, real results. And I'll just tell you, one of my clients, she's an international entrepreneur. She was thriving in her business, and she was doing graphic design, and she was successful. But when she came to me, she said, Malaysia, I don't feel aligned anymore. And she joined my Aligned Success Academy. And through that process, she truly found her purpose. Today, she's not just running a business, she's running her own talk show, reaching global audiences and living in her divine flow. So with that, people always ask me, can you help me to get to the next version of myself, the highest version of myself? And what I always tell them is I help people step into who they were truly always meant to be. Why do people hire my company and choose to work with us? When I first retired from service, I thought things would feel like freedom, true freedom, but it really felt like a funeral. And I had built my entire identity around leadership, service, and structure. And suddenly, I was standing in the quiet of my own home, realizing I didn't know who I was anymore. I remember the day that I came home from my retirement ceremony, and the house was filled with flowers, cards, everything, but my heart felt so empty. I had spent decades helping others, active duty members, their families, patients, but I failed to help myself. I had neglected myself for so many years, and I didn't even know where to start. And that moment changed everything for me, because what I understood firsthand was I knew what it felt like to lose my sense of direction, to question my purpose, and to wonder how I would rebuild my life personally and professionally. And that's when I discovered what my new mission was. And it was basically helping people turn their pain into purpose. And I realized that if I felt that loss after years of success, discipline, and service, there had to be thousands, maybe millions of other people feeling the same way. High-achieving women, leaders, professionals, people who looked successful on the outside, but were silently searching for the meaning, for their personal meaning inside, their soul work. And that became my why. And my why is to help people who are ready to align with their divine assignment, people who know that they're called for something greater, but they just don't have the roadmap built out yet. I provide the tools, the structure, and the clarity that I once needed myself, because I never want anyone else to feel like they have to rebuild their life on their own. And so that's why companies choose to work with me. That same passion carries into the corporate work that I do. when I walk in the organization, I see the people behind all the titles. I can see, I know what it's like to lead through pressure and to navigate challenge and to hold it all together when everything feels uncertain, So I help companies bring structure, clarity, and wellness in their workplaces so that leaders and teams can thrive with balance, purpose, and vision, because without vision, the people perish. And that's true for companies just as much as individuals. And today, I'm so blessed to have the opportunity to bridge the gap between both worlds, corporate and personal. And through Blissful Life Consulting and the Aligned Success Academy, I help people move from confusion to clarity, from burnout to balance, and from performance to peace, true peace. My mission is to help people create lives and organizations that are filled with clarity. They know why they're going, where they're going, and why. Alignment between purpose, values, and action. Flow, where work and life feel lighter. And prosperity, not just financial prosperity, but emotional and spiritual growth as well. And then last but not least, legacy, leaving the world better than they found it, because when people are aligned, they don't just succeed, they shine. What I've enjoyed with this experience, let me just say from day one, when I started working with Che, he actually became a coach/mentor for me. And, I came here really just to document my story, build my business. And I said, my plan was to expand, exponentially, right? And so in order to do that, you need to be coachable. And so from the moment that I walked in, I was able to get clarity, not just put together the program for the DocuSeries, but I got clarity for my business, mapped out my entire program and platform for what I'm rolling out for my customers. And also what I love, you get everything from A to B, and they have an entire team, an entire empire of people that are working with you to ensure your success. So what I love is that all the onus isn't just on you. They give you all the tools and the resources to do everything, and they make it so seamless. But the other side of it is that I was treated like VIP, seriously. Concierge services, anything you need, you get it immediately. It's not like, oh, you'll get this within 24 hours. Everyone is there. And anytime I even had a question by the email, people are responding within such a short period of time. And so I just want to thank Che. I want to thank the entire team of people who made this successful for me, because this was deep down personal, because I was able to, for the first time, really share my story that's really going out to the entire world. And so thank you for allowing me the safety, the space, and an environment of joy, just really pouring into me to allow me to share this with the world, because guess what? Someone needs this story. So again, thank you to the entire team. I feel so blessed. There's been so much more that I couldn't add. I could talk all day. I'm telling you, concierge, food, makeup, everything is provided for you, seriously. And not only am I going to have these docuseries, I have photos and I have B-roll content from beginning to end, just showing you that you can do it and you don't have to do it alone.